Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Hall of Fame Committee, it's my pleasure to welcome all of our honorees, their guests and friends, to the induction of the 7th class of the Kansas City Golf Hall of Fame. I want to begin by recognizing the other members of our committee. First, my good friend and co-conspirator, a member of the Missouri Golf Hall of Fame, Jack Garvin. Martha Linscott, a multiple-time qualifier for USGA events, winner of the Kansas Women's Mid-Amateur this year, and the Mid-Am and Senior Women's Player of the Year. Past president of Central Links Golf, Greg Dunn, 2020 Hall of Fame honoree and longtime general manager and head professional at Heritage Park Golf Course, Rob Wilkin, executive director Doug Habel, and to several of you, several other members of the Hall of Fame who are here today, a special welcome to you. This is a labor of love for all of us on the committee. And unfortunately, we only get to do it every other year. Back in 2012, the Kansas City Golf Association was celebrating its centennial. And the Hall of Fame Committee was one part of our recognition of 100 years of serving golf and golfers in this area. The goal then, as it is now under the banner of Central Links Golf, is to preserve our past and honor the accomplishments and contributions of those who laid the foundation for the game we love today. This year's class is a continuation of the standards we have set to make the Kansas City Golf Hall of Fame a cherished honor. As you can see from the list of the 24 previous honorees in your program, it's not the Hall of Pretty Good. It's not the Hall of Longevity. It's not the Hall of Friends and Buddies. It's the Hall of Fame. So without further ado, let me get started. I don't get a chance to talk about people who have been cited in the congressional record very often. But in 2003, Congressman Dennis Moore commended Mr. Lewis and put into the record an article from the Kansas City Star detailing an event from his amateur days that's quite interesting. Now, I don't think a man's career should be distilled down to one day in one tournament, so I won't do that. But let me say a little bit about Charles Lewis. His grandfather was a golf professional in Devonshire, England, before coming to the U.S. and taking a job at Hardscrabble Country Club in Fort Smith, Arkansas. His father, Junior, was a golf pro at the Country Club of Little Rock. His uncle, Paul, was also a golf professional in Little Rock. Got this right so far? So it's no wonder that Charles III would gravitate to golf. He made it through local qualifying for the U.S. Open 7 straight years from 1970 to 1976. He served in the Marine Corps in Vietnam. Thank you for your service. He won the Arkansas Amateur. He tried the PGA Tour for a bit. He worked as an assistant under 2013 Kansas City Golf Hall of Fame honoree Duke Gibson at Blue Hills, the old Blue Hills. He became head professional at Mission Hills in 1975 and served the members there for 30 years. And he served on the advisory board of the Junior Golf Foundation of Greater Kansas City. All that to say, Mr. Lewis richly deserves the honor we're bestowing on him today. But about that one day. In the 1960 United States Amateur at St. Louis Country Club, the 19-year-old playing in his first major amateur tournament made it to match play and dispatched his first 3 opponents. Then in round 4, he faced the defending champion, kind of pudgy kid from Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. You might know his name, Jack Nicklaus. Not only was he the defending champion, but he had also finished runner-up to Arnold Palmer in the U.S. Open just a few months earlier, before a crowd that was estimated at over 5,000 people, Lewis birdied the first hole and never looked back. His 5-3 win was called the greatest match play upset of the 20th century by Golf World magazine. He continued to surprise the experts, making it to the semifinals where he ultimately lost to Bob Gardner 2-1, but getting that far guaranteed him a spot in the 1961 Masters tournament. As I said, no player's career should be defined by one day in one event. But on that day, that week, Charles Lewis III showed the world he could play the game. Now, I'd like to introduce Jeff Bury to say a few words about Charlie.
Wow, what a class. Let's give him a hand. Don and Doug Habel, thank you for this opportunity. I just am honored to get to say a few words about C3 and talk from more of a personal standpoint. I mean, his career has been unbelievable. And before I do that, I want to just say congratulations, Marty, who's one of my all-time favorite people in the whole world, and I just have so much love and respect for you as one of my members, and I remember the first day out at Wolf Creek. Pernice family, wow. Tommy, too, out at Wolf Creek and all this stuff. And quick story there, I got a phone call one day from a fellow in California named Eddie Marins. I was at Pinehurst at the time, and he says, I got this young man who's just qualified for the U.S. Amateur, and he said he's going to be all by himself in Pinehurst. Can you kind of look after him? And I said, yes, sir. What's his name? And he said, Tom Pernice. And I said, oh, Tom Pernice. I said, I've heard that name. I knew he was on your team, and I assumed he was from Los Angeles. So when we moved to Kansas in 1981, one of the first people I met was Tom Pernice, and I didn't realize he was from Kansas City. So that whole week of the U.S. Amateur, when he was there practicing and playing, I never realized he was a Kansas City man. He was thought he was a California guy. So anyhow, and I wasn't around to meet your first inductee, but what a story. Thank you. And okay, got a couple notes here, and I've got a little leeway. I heard. Just thank you, Don, for that. But let's see what I've got here. Yeah. You know, my role is to really introduce Charles Lewis III, and what an honor. I got a couple quick stories that I think are personal and special. Kathy and I came to Kansas in February of 1981, and we didn't know anybody in Kansas City. Kathy from Florida, me from Connecticut. We came from Pinehurst. One of the first few phone calls I got were from three guys. A guy named Stan Thirst called me, a guy named Bud Williamson called me, and a guy named Charles Lewis called me. And they said, welcome to town. We're happy you're here, and anything we can do to help you get settled in, fantastic. I'll never forget that. Those three guys, legends of Kansas City, made our introduction here just so easy. We traveled 1,100 miles and to get here, and in ice and snowstorm, and never looked back. Charlie, also that first year I was here, he invited me to play in the team championship down at the Lake of the Ozarks. Remember that, Charles? And we had the Midwest section and the Gateway section had this tournament every year, and it was really fun and competitive, and we weren't real competitive. I was terrible. Charles was playing well, but I wasn't. And but I had the greatest time just getting to know him for a couple days and spending that time down there. It was really neat. One of the things that was really unique and interesting about the Midwest section is on Mondays when we'd have tournaments, oftentimes the wives would come with us, and while we played, and they'd hang out together. And I'll never forget, Marilyn and Charles were there, and Audrey and Stan, and Susan and Bud, and we'd have all the. It was kind of like a really close group. I don't know if it continued that. probably doesn't happen now, but that was really, really special to have those Mondays. You know, after retiring, Charles came out to Wolf Creek, and it was really great. And he has so many friends that are here today that played a lot of golf with him. And this guy, I got to tell you, he is just one of the nicest, most positive, smiling people you'll ever meet. And I get a big smile on my face every time I see Charles and get a hug. Two stories that I wasn't going to tell, but I got permission to tell. And one is Junior, Charles' dad. I'll try to get this right now, Charlie. He wanted a fellow named Labron Harris in Stillwater to take a look at his son's golf swing. So Charles got in his car, and I don't know how many miles it is from Little Rock to Stillwater, but Charles drove over there and got there, and it began to rain. There was a downpour. And you couldn't, I mean, it was raining cats and dogs. So Charles goes in the golf shop, and Mr. Harris is there. He coached Oklahoma State too, wasn't he, as well as head pro there. And he says, Charles, he says, the range is right there. Why don't you take your clubs and go out and hit some balls, and I'll stay here in the shop and watch you hit them. And Charles said, no, thank you. Put his clubs back in the car and drove all the way back to Little Rock, never hitting a shot. So the other story, and it segues into the Nicklaus story. I don't know anybody who can say they played probably the greatest player in the world ever, in Jack Nicklaus, and beat him in match play, and then played an 18-hole round of golf at Augusta National with Ben Hogan. And so after playing 18 holes, I think the Hawk, Ben Hogan, was in one of his trances where he was focused the whole day and didn't say a word to Charles. They get into the locker room after, and there's no more intensity than, and Hogan relaxes, and he says, Charles, how's Junior? How's your dad? And they just had the greatest conversation and get together, and it was like a totally different person. Close, Charles? Close? Okay. I have the privilege and the honor to invite or induct Charles Lewis III into the Kansas City Golf Hall of Fame. And the award's going to be accepted by Linda Hicks. And Linda, if you'd come up and grab it, it'd be great. And Don will get you set up. And Charles, would you stand up and just say hello to everybody?
We don't do this every day.
Over there. There you go. No, I don't need to be in there.
You're already in there. You may not know it.
I'll stand over here and keep my head down.
Thank you.
Well, in 2026, there will be another class to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Who will it be? I wish I could tell you, but we have a long list of about, Jack, 30, 35 potential nominees that we will consider as a committee in 2 years. And when we come up with those names, and by the way, I didn't mention that all of these honorees were voted on by a fairly broad group of electors. The members of the Central Links Board of Directors, all the living members of the Hall of Fame, unless their ballot got lost in the mail, Fred, representatives of Midwest Section PGA, and representatives of the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America. So, as I said, it's not the Hall of Pretty Good. It's the Hall of Fame. Well, I hope we'll see a lot of you back here or in our next induction in 2 years. And thank you very much for being here.